Hi, this is Jaya. In this video, we shall see the summary of Faust, a play by Goethe, the great German dramatist. The play is in two parts, and in the introduction, we can see that Goethe is a great dramatist who wrote Faust in two parts, and he has based this drama on a story which he has heard from the medieval legend where a man had sold his soul to the devil. And if you actually analyze the play, you will find that the theme actually treats modern man's sense of alienation and his need to come to terms with the world in which he lives. Actually, it is said that there was a person who was a great learned scholar named Heinrich Faust who felt that many of his achievements had not given him satisfaction, and he wanted to gain knowledge of absolute truth and the meaning of existence, and for that he turned to magic, and finally he made a pact with the devil, and it said that he will sell his soul to the devil if the devil can give him one moment of experience which is so rewarding. And the play starts like this. We find Goethe first describing his thoughts as he is taking the manuscript of Faust after many years. He says that the ghosts have haunted him all his life, but now with more intensity. So he has decided to complete the play, and he says that his world of reality falls back into recent recenses of his mind. And the play begins with the prelude in the theatre, where we find a director, a poet, and a clown, and they argue about what makes a good play. The director says that action and novelty will make a good play. The poet says that artistry and ideas are the basis of a good play, and the clown points out that the artist can be successful if he stops feeling superior and develops a proper appreciation for the values of everyday life. And finally, the director tells about the techniques of producing a play, and he promises his audience that the whole universe will be presented on the stage, beginning from the heaven and proceeding through the world to the hell. And in part 1, we find a prologue in heaven where the Lord and all the host of heaven are assembled, and the three archangels Raphael, Gabriel, and Michael praise the beauty of the universe and the greatness of God. Then Mephistopheles, whom in the play we called as Mephisto, the devil, enters, and he tells that the possession of reason and intelligence has made mankind unhappy, and this troubles him. That time Lord tells about Faust, who is a man who is not debased by reason and who will ultimately be guided by it to a knowledge of truth. Mephistopheles says that Faust's present state is in confusion, but the Lord says that Faust in the end will attain understanding and peace of mind. And this causes a dispute between the Lord and Mephisto, and finally they settle the dispute by a wager. It is that if the devil can tempt Faust as long as he lives and conquer him, then the devil will win. But if he is not able to conquer Faust, the devil has to accept his defeat, and he has to admit that a good man with his grouping intuitions still knows the path that is true and fit, and thus the bargain is sealed. Then we find Faust in his study. He is surrounded by books and scientific instruments, and it is Easter Eve. Now Faust is 50 years old and he is frustrated. He has already mastered philosophy, medicine, law, and theology, but he is not satisfied, and he feels that since he is a human being, he is trapped by the limitations of human understanding. So he thinks if he learns magic, he will be able to attain ultimate knowledge. And so he takes an old magic book and tries to invoke the earth spirit. And as he wanted, the spirit of the earth of reality appears before him, but it rebukes Faust and denies his friendship and vanishes again. And here it is Easter Sunday afternoon. Faust and his fellow scholar Wagner are walking in the countryside. That time a peasant comes and praises Faust, and Faust tells Wagner that he would forego all the earthly joys if he could satisfy his lofty spiritual desires. Wagner is frightened by Faust's talk of spirits and warns him against it. And while they're returning, they notice a mysterious black poodle following them. To Wagner, it is only a harmless little dog, but Faust feels that it is something more than that. And in his study room also, the poodle is still with him, and Faust begins to translate the Gospel of Saint John into German. But he is not able to go beyond the first line, which says, "In the beginning was the Word." And after making a lot of attempts, he finally writes, "In the beginning was the deed." And in the next day, Mephistopheles enters Faust's room dressed as a nobleman, and he tries to tempt Faust by offering him immense wealth and pleasure. But Faust declines the offer by saying that all this cannot end his doubts or satisfy his needs. That time, Mephistopheles reminds Faust of his failure to commit suicide on Easter Eve. Faust is surprised about how Mephistopheles was able to learn what was in his mind. And later on, Mephistopheles drives him to voice rejection of the value of life and the traditional Christian virtues, because that is one way of turning him against God. And then the devil urges Faust to agree to become his servant after death, that is, to sell his soul after his death. And for this, Mephistopheles says that he will provide all that Faust desires. Faust is not able to understand how someone can satisfy him with all he needs, so he accepts this offer with some hesitation. And Faust promises that the moment he is able to enjoy the pleasure which he wanted, that will be the day of his death, and he will serve the devil forever after. Now 4 men, Froch, Brandier, Siebel and Altmaier, they are drinking in a tavern in a city in Leipzig. Mephistopheles comes and plays his tricks on them, but Faust says that all this is not going to give him happiness. Now Mephistopheles brings Faust to a witch who can give him a potion, a medicine that can remove 30 years from Faust's age so that he can enjoy sensual pleasures. And as said, she gives him, and Faust sees himself as a 20-year young man in a mirror. And in the same mirror, he sees the image of a beautiful young woman, and the restoration of his youth makes him very happy. Later in the street on the German town, Faust sees Margarita. Here in the play, it is called as Gretchen, and he remembers that this was the woman whom he saw in the mirror. So he tries to talk with her, but Gretchen refuses to respond and walks away. Now Mephisto joins him, and Faust asks the devil to help him to get her. And Mephisto says that his powers are limited, and since Gretchen is innocent and piety, he has no power over her. So Faust asks him to give him jewelry and other expensive gifts so that he can win over Gretchen using that. Now Gretchen is alone in a small bedroom, and she is wondering about the strange man who came and spoke to her boldly on the street. Then she goes out. Faust and Mephistopheles enter into her room with a chest of jewels, and they leave the jewels in the room and go. When Gretchen returns, she sees the jewels, and she is so delighted by their beauty that she does not think about how the jewels came to her room. Later we find Mephistopheles reporting angrily to Faust that Gretchen's mother saw the jewels, and because she was suspicious of their origin, she has given them to the priest as an offering. We find Martha, Gretchen's friend, alone in her place thinking about her husband who has left her long ago. Gretchen comes in and tells Martha now she has found another casket of jewels. This time Martha advises her to keep the jewels as a secret and not to tell her mother. At this time, Mephistopheles enters and tells to Martha that he knows Martha's husband in Italy, and he says that he is dead and he was a witness for this. Martha is upset because her husband has not left her any money, but she wants definite proof so that she can be free to remarry. Mephistopheles promises to bring a gentleman called Faust who will be the witness for the death. And he says that Gretchen also must be there at that time when Faust comes to meet them. So the meeting is arranged. When this is told to Faust refuses to lie about the death of a man, but because it is a chance for him to meet Gretchen, he agrees. And in the garden of Martha's house, we find Faust courting Gretchen and Mephistopheles courting Martha. And Gretchen tells Faust about her life and her love for her baby sister. Faust is really charmed by her and her innocence. Faust and Gretchen pledge their love for each other, and after he has gone, Gretchen wonders whether a gentleman like Faust will really love a simple girl like her. Faust goes alone into the woods. He is happy about the new joy in his life, which Gretchen has given him, and he also realizes how much he is becoming dependent on Mephistopheles for fulfilling his wishes. Now the devil enters and reminds Faust that it was he who had saved him from suicide and he who is responsible for his present happiness. And when the talk goes about Gretchen, Faust thinks about her and hurries away to see her. Faust and Gretchen are together in the garden, and Gretchen has noticed that Faust never participates in any religious rites and asks whether he believes in religion, for which Faust says that he will analyze the actions, and if he is satisfied, only then he will participate in any religious activities. Now Gretchen and Lisbeth, another young woman, are drawing water from a well. Lisbeth gossips about a maiden who has been made pregnant by her lover, and she also predicts that the man will not marry her now. Hearing this, Gretchen is worried because she is also now pregnant, and though no one else knows about it, Lisbeth's predictions about the other girl's lover make Gretchen more aware of her own plight. And Gretchen does not understand what made her to sin, but she understands that her motives were pure and she was very sincere in her love. And here, Gretchen's brother Valentine, who is a soldier, who was one very proud of her sister's reputation, now hears the rumors that her innocence has been lost. So he is very angry with her, and he is waiting in the dark near their doorway with the hope of catching her lover and getting his revenge. He sees Faust and Mephistopheles advancing to their house in the dark. Faust seems to be interested only in satisfying his pleasure, and he asks Mephistopheles to give him more jewels because he does not want to meet Gretchen with an empty hand. Valentine steps forward and challenges Faust, and both the men draw their swords and fight. With the help of Mephisto, Faust wounds mortally Valentine. Hearing the noise, all the neighbors get up and come, but Faust and Mephistopheles escape. Gretchen also hears the noise and comes out, and she rushes to her brother to help him. But Valentine is about to die, but before he could die, he curses her, insults her, and he dies. Gretchen attends a service at the church and asks for forgiveness for her sins and unbearable suffering. Though the church is crowded, she feels alone except for an evil spirit who comes near her and whispers in her ear that she is pregnant. Valentine is dead because of her, and her mother is dead because of the sleeping potion which Gretchen had given her. It has been nearly a year since Valentine's death, and Faust has now abandoned Gretchen. Now it is Walpurgis night, that is April 30th, and it is a time when the witches all gather at the top of the Brocken in the Harz Mountains. Mephisto introduces Faust to all the infernal spirits, and they are all dancing. And while dancing, Faust suddenly notices a mouse coming out of the mouth of the witch with whom he is dancing. This shocks him, and he remembers the pure love of Gretchen and her innocence. But Mephistopheles comes and distracts him and takes him to a theatre. And in the play, they watch and hear the poems recited by a succession of mythological figures like Oberon, Titania, and Ariel. But anyway, Faust is not able to forget Gretchen, and he inquires about her, and he comes to know that she is in a prison. So he asks Mephisto to help him to free her. But Mephisto says that human beings join with the devils to enjoy, but they have no courage to face the consequences of the decision. And he also says that Faust is responsible for Gretchen's misfortunes. But Faust is only thinking about Gretchen and he wants to free her from the prison. So Mephistopheles agrees that he will help him, but his powers are limited. And then Faust and Mephisto mount on magic black horses and gallop to rescue Gretchen. And Faust goes to Gretchen's cell, and there he finds her insane because of imprisonment and sense of guilt. Seeing Faust, Gretchen hurdles fearfully in the corner of the cell, thinking he is the hangman come to hang her for having drowned her baby. Seeing all this, Faust cries out in despair. Suddenly, Gretchen regains her senses and recognizes him, and they embrace. Faust tries to hurry Gretchen out of the cell before morning light, but she refuses to accept his offer. When dawn breaks, Mephisto enters the cell, and Gretchen recognizes the devil and starts praying. So Mephisto tells Faust to come out at once, or he will also share Gretchen's doom. And he says that she is condemned. But a voice from heaven says she is redeemed. So Mephisto and Faust leave Gretchen, and the scene closes with Gretchen's voice faintly calling Faust. Faust is seen in the second part resting and trying to sleep in a meadow. A choir of spirits sing to him, and he gets up and continues his adventures. Mephisto comes to the emperor's court in a guise of jester, and the officials are reporting to the king about the government's financial crisis and the related problems. Mephisto suggests that the emperor could make use of the kingdom's hidden treasures that are buried as gold beneath the land, and he also says that they can issue paper money which will make the situation better. Hearing this, the emperor is so very happy, and he announces a great carnival to celebrate Ash Wednesday, that is the beginning of Lent. And here everyone is in the Lenten carnival, and Faust and Mephisto are along with the king and his courtiers. The emperor accepted Mephisto's ideas and has issued paper money, and because of this the country is flooded with a new currency, and everyone feels that they are all rich. The emperor asks Faust to bring the spirits of Paris and Helen of Troy, and Mephisto says that Faust has to visit the eternal mothers, the mysterious spirits who are the source of all life and live in a grotto deep in the earth. He gives him a magic key and gives him the instructions to find the mothers. And the emperor and his courtiers are gathered to see Paris and Helen, and by magic Faust makes a Greek temple appear, and Paris and Helen are seen in front of the temple. Seeing Helen's beauty, Faust is mesmerized, and he tries to take her away from Paris, but he is knocked down by a burst of thunder and falls unconscious. Mephisto lifts unconscious Faust, and takes him to his room and puts him on his bed. Then he takes Faust's academic gown and goes to the university. There he meets Nicodemus, who is a new scholar who works in the place of Wagner, and Wagner has now replaced Faust at the university. And Wagner tells Mephisto that he is about to create a human being, and after some manipulations, a tiny humanoid figure appears in the bottle, and it is called as Homunculus, that is little man. Homunculus floats to Faust and eavesdrop on his dreams, and he tells that Faust should be taken to Greece to participate in the classical Walpurgis night. Mephisto asks about it, and Homunculus explains that the classical spirits are the only true ones, and describes the differences between the gloomy northern witch feet to which Mephisto is accustomed, and he tells about the joyous warm southern festival. Mephistopheles is dubious. Finally, he accepts the invitation when Homunculus tells him about the erotic pleasures he can enjoy with the Thessalian witches who will also be there. Mephisto lifts up Faust's unconscious body and goes out with Homunculus. There they find all the spirits of mythology gathered for the annual festival on the eve of August 9th. This is the day when Caesar defeated Pompey. And now the scene changes to the kingdom of Sparta, and it is a time which is just shortly after the Trojan War. Helen enters with a chorus of captive Trojan women, while Meneclus and the Greek troops remain on the beach celebrating their victory. The women are frightened about their future. At this time, Mephistopheles enters disguised as Porcius, an ugly hag, an old woman, and Porcius speaks to Helen and tells that Menelaus is planning to kill her and the others. The women are really frightened, and Porcius assures them that there is a person who can save them. because he is a person who has conquered the surrounding country while the Greeks were away at Troy. And that is none other than Faust, who is said to be a barbarian chieftain, and he says that Faust will surely protect them. The women beg Porcius to take them to Faust. We find Porcius taking Helen and the women to Faust's medieval court, and Faust comes as a Germanic knight. He greets Helen, and in order to get her attention, he gives her the responsibility for the prisoner Lyncus. Then he woos Helen and pledges his undying love to her. Porcius warns the army of Menelaus is attacking them. So Faust assembles his soldiers and sends them to meet the enemy. And he urges Helen to flee with him to Arcadia, where they will find bliss and freedom together. The women of the chorus lie down in the peaceful green meadow. Porcius enters and reports that a son, Euphoron, has been born to Faust and Helen, and the lad is beautiful, alert, energetic, and artistic. Helen, Faust, and Euphoron come out, and suddenly Euphoron is filled with a wild desire to reach the heavens. So he climbs a tall cliff, reaches the top of the cliff, and hurls himself off, but he falls down to his death. His body disappears, but his clothes and the lyre which he was carrying remain on the ground. We hear Euphorion's voice calling his mother to join him. So Helen sadly bids Faust farewell, and she says that happiness and beauty can never permanently be combined. She vanishes, leaving a wheel behind. Porcius enters and asks Faust to keep the garment as a memento and inspiration. And later on, Porcius reveals himself as Mephisto, who was in disguise all these days. Now Mephisto enters and tries to tempt Faust with another offer of life filled with pleasure and glory. But Faust wants to reclaim the land from the sea. So Mephisto tells Faust that the emperor has been forced into a war. And if he can help the emperor in this war, in return he can ask the coastal lands as a gift. And with that, Faust can continue his experiment. And Mephisto invokes the three mighty men who fought with David and the Israelites against the Philistines. They go to meet the emperor, and Faust enters the royal tent and promises the king to help to win the battle. Mephisto and magic help in winning the battle. Now the emperor rewards Faust by giving him a large strip of coastal land which he thinks is mostly underwater and which everyone considers worthless. We find Philemon and Baccalus, an old couple who live in that area, telling a wandering stranger about Faust's amazing achievements. It is also said that Faust is determined to own all the land in the region, and he has given them a large amount of money in exchange for the cottage in which they are living, but they have refused to sell because that is the place where they have lived together. In the palace, we find Faust, who is now 100 years old. He is brooding in the palace garden about his failure to acquire the old couple's house and orchard. At that time, Mephisto and the three mighty men return from a pirating expedition, and he orders them to evict Philemon and Baccalus from their cottage and secure the property. But later, Faust learns that Mephisto and the three mighty men have killed Philemon and Baccalus and their wandering friend, and the house and the orchard have been burnt. Faust is overcome by anger at this miscarriage of his plans. We find Faust is accosted by four grey hags who have risen from the smoke of the burning cottage. The four grey hags are want, debt, distress, and care. The first three are not able to reach him, but care comes near him and warns him of the coming of a brother death. In their conversation, Faust tells her that he cannot become free until he releases himself from his dependence on Mephisto's magic power. He also says that he has learnt that man should be concerned only with what is legitimately attainable in human life and should not seek after impossible things. Care tells Faust that man is unable to find peace in life, but she is unable to frighten him. In a final effort to weaken his resolution, she breathes on him and makes him blind. But Faust remains determined to complete his great project in the short time left before his death. Now a gang of lemures, that is a species of monkey and also a type of ghost, under the supervision of Mephistopheles, work at digging Faust's grave. The blind Faust hears the sounds, but he thinks that they are working on his project. Faust is now filled with a proud vision of the prosperity and happiness of the people who will someday inhabit the reclaimed lands. Faust collapses dead in the arms of Lemurus, who takes him and lies him on the grave. Mephisto assumes that he has won Faust's soul. While Lemurus buries Faust, Mephisto and a horde of devils wait to take his soul into custody. Suddenly, the heavens open and a host of angels appear. They strew the grave with rose petals, and Mephisto argues with them that Faust's soul belongs to him. But a hymn tells that the healing truth of love and the bliss that awaits purified souls in communion and take away Faust's body in their arms to heaven. Mephisto realizes that he has been defeated and that his scheme to win Faust's soul has failed because of his own mishandling. He attributes his defeat to his failure to take into account the power of love and the strange ways in which it manifests itself. A chorus of holy men, among whom are Pater Escasis, Pater Profundus, and Pater Seraphicus, sing the praises of heaven. A host of angels enter, bearing the immortal remains of Faust. They are joined by the spirits of children who died in innocence at birth and by three famous penitent women from the Bible, Magna Peccatrix, Mulier Samaritina, and Maria Aegyptia, who prepare the way for the entrance of Una Ponitinum, ones who called Gretchen on earth. Dr. Marinus chants the praise of the Blessed Virgin, the Queen of Heaven. The penitent, who was formerly Gretchen, expresses ecstasy that Faust has been saved. The Mater Brosia calls upon Gretchen and Faust to rise to the higher sphere. Dr. Marinus prostrates himself in adoration of the Virgin and the salvation which her grace brings. And the scene closes as the mystical chorus chants a hymn which says that all things are symbols of the great eternal reality and that through love the spirit of eternal womanhood leads mankind to truth and salvation. And here the play ends. And Christopher Marlowe based his Dr. Faustus play on this theme, but the ending is different in Marlowe's play, where Faustus' soul is captured by Mephistopheles. That is, Mephistopheles wins in Christopher Marlowe's play, whereas in this play we find that Goethe has said that true love and the final decision of Faust, where he wants to reclaim the land from water and make his people happy, has given him the chance of taking his soul to heaven and living in eternal bliss, and that Gretchen's prayers have helped him to reach the heaven where it says that womanhood can lead mankind to truth and salvation. This is the end of the play. I hope you would have enjoyed this video. If you have anything more to add on to what I've said, please write it in the comment box. Like the video, share it with your friends, and if you have not subscribed my channel, please subscribe. Thank you.